Right, so thanks very much indeed. And I guess bonjour, I should say. And I'm very glad that we're not a French colony because that's the extent of my French. And I think what we've learned today is how close we came to that outcome. Can I acknowledge the Menang people who very graciously welcomed us this morning? I think if there's one message we've learned today, it's that this colony that was on its knees for about 20, 25 years from the 1830s probably would not have survived without the labour and the know-how and knowledge of Aboriginal people. I think today we've heard some incredibly rich stories told by people with passion. I know behind every one of those projects is a team of passionate people. You can't really delve into history and heritage without having that passion, because I know there's a lot of work in the research, it's painstaking, and the conservation is very painstaking. So I know there's a lot of, unpaid effort and energy behind a lot of these outcomes. The Heritage Council's had a bit of a change of direction this year, so there's a new bunch of people who have been installed from 1 January, and we've reflected a little bit on what our mission is, what we're about. We've taken that opportunity to sort of rethink, and what we've done is sort of reimagined what we're about, and interestingly, where we've landed is that one of our major objectives is to tell the epic stories of WA. So this is absolutely right on point in terms of the messages in the presentations today. So we're trying to sort of switch our focus from the buildings and the places, from that architectural perspective, to what are the stories, and the buildings and places are just a vehicle to tell those stories. So that's going to be a very sharp focus of ours in coming years. We've also, reinforced our desire to see these places used. Nothing worse than watching a heritage place deteriorate because it's unloved, it lacks private investment or government investment. So these things are obviously often in government or private hands, but government sometimes doesn't give it a priority because it might not be the core business of the particular agency that has the heritage place in its estate. We've got to get better at looking after these places, and I think connecting it to people and their stories is the way to do it. And so we're very, very keen to work with anyone who's got money, basically, to do up these places and look after them and activate them so we can all enjoy them. One of the other things we've been very focused on is 26 and 29, and really thinking deeply about that. And we've recently engaged with Danger Cooling organisation in Perth, Noongar organisation that has been given Lotteries West funding to think about how we ensure 2029 is a unity story, and that's really what we're keen to do as well. One of the things that we've been thinking about is, the breadth of our history. We've got an incredibly interesting geological history. Our biodiversity is something else. We've got more species in the Fitzgerald National Park than the entire of the United Kingdom. So just think about that. This is a really unusual place. We missed a couple of ice ages, in case you want to know the technical reason why we've got the biodiversity we have. So we've got an incredibly interesting story, and the story of human habitation is 60,000+ years old. So to us, 26 and 29 are just, punctuation points in a very, very long history. And milestones that we should celebrate, but we should celebrate Western Australia and the deep and rich history we have, which is a lot more than the redcoats that turned up, and we're very keen that we don't see those sort of reenactments on the shores of the Swan River with the redcoats rowing in. I think I remember that from 1979 when I was a school kid. that's a sort of a pretty one-dimensional representation of what we're about, and I think there's a lot that separates West Australia from the rest of the state. Sorry to introduce a secessionist note, but it's true. Biologically, geologically, in terms of the history of exploration here, it's quite different to the eastern coast, and I think it's something that's a difference we should celebrate and share with others. The other thing that we've looked at in terms of our heritage listing program is who's missing. There's been a long project that started well before I got there by the previous council to look at the thematic gaps. You know, what's missing in terms of all the places we list. There's about 3,500 places on the WA Heritage Register, and you can imagine there's a high proportion of, you know, churches and colonial buildings and so on. I didn't even know about a skate park until today, so there you go. What we've found is that there are gaps in that collection of registered places, and the register is supposed to be comprehensive and reasonably representative. So we can't obviously register everything because we're just a small organisation. It takes a long time, that's the reality, but you want to have things that represent the best of WA and its history. And what we've found is that there's a lot of people who are absent, and that's women. Aboriginal people and places are absent from our register, non-English speaking migrants, and workers, you know, the people who actually built and made our economy tick. The agricultural labourers, the convict labourers, the Aboriginal labourers, and so on. So we're quite deliberately focusing on those. We've had a priority session and we've decided to focus on those 4 areas in terms of the listings we're doing, and that's why Fishing Boat Harbour is one that we're looking at, because that's non-English speaking migrants and their economic contribution to WA. Now, this is going to take quite a bit of discipline for the council, because we've got to try and stick to those priorities when we've got people coming at us every 5 minutes saying, list this, list that, Windsor Theatre must be saved. You know, that's the history of the Heritage Council, being buffeted by external demands all the time. So we're trying to be really disciplined and focus on those priorities so we can make the list when we arrive in 2029 much more representative than it is today. So, Albany, why are we here? Well, this is a really interesting place in the state's history. It's a bit of a pivot point, a crossroads. You can see a lot of interaction with Albany internationally, and much to my disgust, it was a New South Wales colony once, but fortunately we're not New South Welsh people. When they talk about the far west of New South Wales, I didn't realise they were talking about Albany, but clearly that's a bullet we dodged. But yeah, Albany, you know, where else would you hold the Regional Heritage Conference but Albany, because it has such an interesting history that is yet to be fully told. I'm just going to share you something personal, which is an extract from my great-great-grandfather's journal. This has never been publicly talked about. He was a servant to Charles Darwin on the voyage of the Beagle, and he kept a personal journal on that voyage for 5 years around the world. And just a warning, there's some commentary in here that people might find offensive. Just remember, this is a servant class individual, not very well educated, born in the middle of England in 1809, encountering Western Australia for the first time. So the kind of shock to his senses was palpable. So he says in 1836, as the Beagle sailed in, and he doesn't write terribly well, so just forgive me for that. 3 islands within mouth of entrance, with flat on each side, which makes it narrow. The settlement is small and very scattered. The country at large sterile and very sandy. Yet a few potatoes, pumpkins, etc. are grown. Salt provisions are used here, except when the kangaroo can be caught, and the woolwah, which I suspect is a wallaby, but I'm not sure. the latter very small. Great numbers of Indians here. Now, I suspect Indians equals Aboriginal people, remembering he came here from South America. That was his previous destination. And the most miserable and meagre set of beings I've yet seen. The colony belongs to New South Wales. Kangaroo flesh sold at 8p per pound. Sir Richard Spencer, the present governor. No tattooing among natives, but gashes with sharp stones, knives, etc., which they inflict on themselves on their breasts, said to be done out of bravado to see which can stand the most pain without crying out. So that's his interpretation of that traditional practice, which is way off the mark, but you can see the impact this place had on a sort of a foreign tourist in 1836. So the presentations today were just amazing. I didn't manage to get to all of them because I couldn't be in two places at once, but I tried. And I was blown away by the technology that has been deployed in looking at our history and through the panoramas by Andrew Woods. That's an incredible project, and I think it's something that the Heritage Council is going to look into a bit further. We'll do a visit there next year, hopefully to Hive, and immerse ourselves in that experience. And I guess that illustrates how important it is that we actually tap into some of these new technologies to tell the stories, because we've got to remember we need a younger generation getting involved in heritage, and we need to reach them through their preferred way of communicating. My kids send text messages from their bedroom to the kitchen. We've got to just remember, they don't go out and find experiences. They look for them on their phone. They live in a virtual world. Fremantle Prison, again, incredibly interesting stories, and really stirred up a lot of memories for me. My great-grandmother was in that prison a number of times, actually. She was a regular visitor. And when I was a very, very young public servant in the 80s, the Premier, late 80s, the Premier of the day said to me, you go down to Fremantle Prison, it's on fire, I want you to handle the media. So I went to the prison, it was indeed on fire, and the prison superintendent was strutting around with a cowboy hat and a gun in a holster, and I could immediately see what the problem was. And I was fairly instrumental in bringing about the end of the riot, because the prisoners wanted me to organise a broadcast on 6PR, which was the racing radio. That's the only station they listened to, the horse races, explaining, the dire conditions they were in and so on. So I organised for that to happen, and the riot ended. And the prison was closed not long after that. So, that's in my lifetime. That was still an operating prison, and that's probably the reason it wasn't demolished like the Barracks Arch, because it was still in use by the state. So the state's slowness at capital works upgrades probably has some hidden advantages. Nick, thanks for the presentation on Christmas Island. I had no idea about the rich history of Christmas Island. Do you want to find out more about the backstory of a Hungarian name born in Essex? That sounds fascinating as well. And we need to get you cloned as well, because stonemasons are in short supply, and having that skill set is going to be absolutely vital to, conserving heritage places all over the state. I can think of plenty of examples where that skill set's needed, and very hard to find those skills these days. Jen, I don't know if Jen's here from Whale World still, but again, that was my Year 6 school excursion to Whale World. It was still operating. It was not the Whale World of today, it was the Chains Beach Whaling Station. So, can you imagine a bunch of primary school kids standing on that flensing deck? I remember the stickiness of the oil and the offal and the blood, looking at this big, smooth, dark object, and I remember asking a man there what that was, and he said, that's the whale's liver. And then and the smell, the stench, I can't tell you how bad the smell was, it just stuck to you. And I then remember us going off to bussed off to a local park in Albany to eat our polony sandwiches, which none of us wanted after that experience. So that stays with me, that place. And Shan, yeah, the skate park, what an amazing story. And that was, again, did what it was supposed to, which was raise a lot of memories and emotions, because that was my era, the skate era. And I remember in year 7 demanding a skateboard. Someone from America was coming to WA, like a great pop star skateboarder, and I insisted my parents take me to see this performance, this exhibition, this great skateboarder. So that was absolutely right, spot on in terms of my era, and brought up all these memories that I'd forgotten about. And I think that's what heritage can do if the stories are told really well, and that was fantastic. And Paul Mackey and team from the Port Authority, Heritage Council was lucky to go and visit the site last year, and we were just all really impressed with the way the Port Authority was going about it. Very authentic, very sensitive to the importance of Aboriginal involvement. And for us, it was also, again, right on point in terms of the people who are often forgotten, women, Aboriginal people, workers. So we're delighted about that project and to see that place coming to life and being in use. Darren, your presentation was fascinating. Had no idea of that connection, and I'm really interested in the multicultural stories of Western Australia, which go back a long way and are also, often overlooked in official histories, and that's why we're putting some effort into that non-English speaking background priority. We've got some great stories to be told in Western Australia about, Afghan cameleers, the Sikh connection, Italian migrants, the riots in the goldfields where Italians were persecuted pretty horrendously. I mean, they're incredible stories, and we've just got to bring them to the surface through by whatever means. And Shane Burke and Peter DeMarco's work, again, incredible story, and great to see all that information being enlivened. And it just really, rammed home to me that point about how influential Aboriginal people were in our success as a colony, and without which we would have had no water supply, no clue where we were going, and no labour, because there was a pretty threadbare workforce here. And of course, the last presentation I was able to see, unfortunately I wasn't in all of them, was the one by the Aboriginal History Unit. That is a gem, and it's incredible the amount of work that they're doing and producing on behalf of the state and the people in WA. Quite poignant for me that Aboriginal World War I soldiers came back to this state and were denied soldier settler blocks that their mates got because they were non-Aboriginal. My nephew has written a play on that, in fact, and it toured WA last year. His great-uncle was a Gorditch Murra man from Western Victoria. So this is a problem across Australia where Aboriginal people were denied those opportunities. So we've got a lot of truth-telling to do, and I think we're obviously right on the verge of it now. Finally, I just wanted to say, look, this is a really interesting point in the state's history. Where we're able to employ incredible technology. We've got a lot of incredibly passionate people drawing out these stories, and we're heading to the 26 and 29 milestones. Albany's done a great job in getting ready for 2026, and the Mayor reminded me this morning that that journey started 5 years ago. The state is not quite as ready, if I can put it politely, but I expect as soon as the state election's out of the way in March next year, there will be a lot of activity and effort to prepare for, and hopefully funding, to prepare for those milestones. And I think we've got all the sort of ingredients in this room to make sure they're incredibly successful events. If we can collaborate and bring all these threads together, so marry the technology with the storytelling, the oral histories, bring it all to life. And that's what the Heritage Council hopes to, guide and advise government on and bring about as much as we can within our remit. And of course, next year, we've got our conference in May. Someone confirm? Yes, I'm getting nods. May in Fremantle. And that hopefully will be another opportunity to sort of bring the stories out to the fore and promote them and start a sort of broader dialogue about what 26 and 29 means to us. So thank you very much for attending all. It's been a fabulous conference and really appreciated all your questions. I've got hundreds of questions for each of the presentations, but I thought it would be a bit rude to send them all through. So I'll try and pick off individuals after the event. So thank you once again. See you. Thanks.